Hello, everyone. It is currently 10:30 at night on Wednesday. It's Wednesday here, and we are nearing the end of MSI here on the League Prediction Show, brought to you by PrizePicks. We've been having fun throughout MSI, talking about all sorts of predictions, and we're actually joined by Croissant this time, who is no longer a rest in peace JPEG. So we've got the full lineup here. Very excited about it. And boy, have we had some interesting games and matches to talk about. The way the show works is we're going to talk a little bit. Normally we do predictions for the next couple of days, and we will do that. But I think before we get into that, we might spend a little bit of time talking about the last two matches because I think those deserve some conversation. Joining me, of course, is Cubby. Cubby, you are what, on the East Coast right now? What time is it there?
I Midwest, so it's 12:20. I decided to join you guys in the hotel room setups.
Yeah.
And then Croissant joined us as a whole overall, so I can't be. It's now a 3-1 away setup, so
Yes.
I misbalanced the show. That's on
That's
me.
true. That's true.
I tried to make it all balanced. Now it's imbalanced.
Yeah.
That's on me. Yeah,
Croissant's the only one reporting back from LA.
yeah.
Mahir is here, not too far away from me. Mahir just got back
Mhm,
from the games themselves as well. So,
mhm.
how's MSI been for you, Mahir?
It's honestly been really fun. It's my first international covering. I went to Worlds back in 2022, and that was obviously a surreal experience. And it feels like every time I go to an international, it's always the most banger game. So my heart is content, so to speak.
Yes, yeah. And then finally, we've missed him the last couple episodes, but it is well returning for the first time in a while is Croissant, who was previously in near airport jail, and he realized that doing this show was the better thing, so he quit that job. I believe is how that went down.
Yep,
And
Dobby is free.
he's he's back. Croissant, good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Yeah. All right. So, again, normally we talk about prediction stuff. Before we get into that, thank you, Prize Picks. We'll talk more about them later. But just because we're all the NA folks, how are you all holding up after yesterday's match against BLG for FlyQuest?
I guess I can start because I actually thought about it when I went on a walk this morning. I think
You
if
need like a
FlyQuest just
spiritual
knows
journey.
how to play Rumble,
Yeah.
yeah, I just went for a walk. I'm like, if FlyQuest knows how to pick Rumble or how to play Rumble, I feel like that series goes differently. Because the fact that they're able to pick Galio first, B1, and it just completely derailed their draft, it sucks because we got our hopes so high, games 1 through 4. Obviously, there was the Senna Rise game where they weren't able to end when they should have. But it feels like game 5 really showed their limitations, specifically in a couple roles. So it's so painful knowing how winnable these are, but also I'm proud of how well they were able to play.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in?
Um, it hurt because it was winnable. You know, uh, it's been a while since like an NA team lost, and I was like legitimately just like, oh crap. Uh, I really can't remember the last one where I was like, I felt like it probably would have been NRG G2, honestly, but I mean, you guys won those. But like, I just can't remember the last one where I really felt like we had a good chance to win when a lot of people didn't have us at an advantage. And I think I was saying it was like 40 to 45% chance FlyQuest win. It felt like it could have been a 3-1. Obviously, it's a 3-2 in BLG's favor. And yeah, I mean, there wasn't a single second of that series until like 4 minutes into game 5 where I didn't think that FlyQuest could win that series. And that is a good thing, but also FlyQuest, I mean, this team's been together for a year and a half, and they're gonna have to overcome this demon of, actually toppling one of these Eastern teams because that's all that's left for them to accomplish, and I think they can. But it really bummed it didn't happen this time around. I thought this is a good chance, and they could have won the series.
Yeah. Croissant, how was your experience with that? Because I know you care a lot about North American success and all that. So,
Yeah, sorry, one sec, one sec.
oh yeah, you're good.
How do I mute myself for 1 second?
Oh, well, while Croissant is figuring out his technical issues, let me talk a little bit about how I have a funny story from yesterday where I watched the entire series with Mark Z, because he got up here on Monday, I think it was, maybe Sunday night. I think it was Sunday, and so we went to the venue and watched everything. I think he was elsewhere game 2, but we were so psyched after game 4, and I turned to him and I said, the most North American thing in the world to do right now in Game 5 is just to have a terrible level 1 and then let that spiral out of control and just get completely demolished. And he
You
was
did
like,
not
yes,
say that fast.
100%. That is the thing that would most likely happen in most scenarios. And then he started seeing pick and ban, and he just started going like, oh no. he, I won't expose too much of what he said because I know he's commissioner now and is not a personality. But it was just very funny to me sitting next to him, and I feel like he probably this is one of the few times where I feel like he since he took the job was probably like, you know what, fuck it, just get me on the analyst desk. I have to talk about this. But yeah, it was crazy that it just went exactly the way where there's just been so many times where like Game 5, some crazy thing could happen, and then North America just gets like annihilated. So it was about it was not surprising, even if it was very disappointing. Yeah.
My experience with the series was knowing that FlyQuest, based off of their, just seeing them come back in game 3 and take that gold lead and then force down top. And this was a thing FlyQuest had done a lot in North America too, which is like one thing that makes a team good
Called in
is
early.
even when you can just take like a guaranteed advantage, you push the limits of a circumstance and then see if you can get the enemy to flinch, and then you get even more advantages. And if you too often play the safe way, you might still have like a 95% win chance or whatever in a game, but you'll miss out on like, even more advantages. And then, but then still seeing that and being like, I really don't like what they're doing here. And then them throwing and then being like, yeah, that's unfortunate. But then just like resetting, as I think a lot of fans also reset properly after that. That I didn't see like too much discussion until the series was over. Uh, and then I watched the series with Apollo and ThinkGuard yesterday, and during parts of that series, well, we were like in and out because we were watching or we were eating at Chili's. Um, and then our waiter was like, "Oh shit, you're watching League of Legends." He was watching with us a little bit, but I was like, I want. At one point in the series, I was literally like, "Okay, these guys have locked bans. They've been FlyQuest keeps picking red side. They keep banning Cassio, Azir, Galio, and
Yep.
they Galio ban instantly forces Rumble ban. What happens if
Yep.
they drop this Galio ban once?" And the fact that they were completely caught off guard with that honestly pissed me off. I think, that's just I would be really
Yeah.
mad at myself if I let that happen. And I know, everyone's kind of like talking about Zillion or talking about like Lucian or Monster's mistake or all these different things, but um, I think Whippo did a really good job of like taking some sort of like he's he's not even talking about like game 5 draft specifically. He was like, we should have let the Rumble through earlier, and then I could have played like Rise into it when it was available early in the series, and I'd prepped these picks. And that could have been, like that's one way of taking accountability. But I think once you've made that choice, it clearly wasn't such a bad choice that it threw them the series because there was still a way around it in game 5. But uh, so I was pretty fucking sad about that because even if they played Rumble, even if FlyQuest, even if Whippo was for some reason workshopping as Rumble, there's no scenario where I think it's good to take Rumble 1-2 once
I
they've already
agree.
picked Galio. They just don't have a good
You,
answer into
you ban
Galio.
Yone. Like you
And
would have had to
and
leave Yone up and pick both.
and people are criticizing Quad's champion pool, and it's like,
Agree.
dude, he's literally like, there's there is no mid laner right now in North America that would have a deep enough champion pool in that scenario. There are 14 champions deep, and Galio is such a strong first pick on mid lane. It's their comp that you saw that last game, guys. That was a like ThinkGuard immediately. He was like, I'd be so happy with this as my game 1 draft of the series,
Yeah.
and yeah, and
You're
not
talking
just
about
because they had a bunch of
BLGs.
globals, just because,
Yeah.
not just because it had globals, but just which is what people seem to be fixated on, but like just because it is perfectly well rounded in
Mhm.
prio scaling everything. So yeah, this was unfortunate, but as Gubby said, new FlyQuest could push them. Know that they can do it at Worlds too, but it's about how much progress they can make. And it's tough because they're going straight to EWC. I think a big reason TL looked worse in the spring is because, yeah. Anyway, I don't need to get into it, but
Yeah.
like, are they going to handle the burnout, the potential burnout? Okay, so
Yeah. All right. Well, normally we don't discuss that stuff, but I feel like it was worth the conversation because we won't probably do a hotline league on Monday, so this is a good spot to have that conversation. But I don't know. It does feel really good to have a team that feels like I do. Part of me still feels like FlyQuest was the better team. You know,
Yeah.
at least the way they played throughout that series. So, uh, all right, let's talk a little bit about what else is going on. So we just had the Gen G T1 match happen. Gen G won 3-2. And so what that means is, well, this was already scheduled, but we have CFO AL tomorrow. Uh,
BLG,
AL BLG, AL BLG, and that will be very exciting. And then we have the winner of that going up against T1 on Friday, and then the winner of that going up against Gen G on Saturday. So a potential T1 Gen G rematch if LPL loses to T1, who have very frequently lost to T1 or have very frequently beaten the LPL. So
But
we'll
at
see how that goes.
Worlds, not MSI, Travis.
Yeah. It's all international events. All right, let's get some quick predictions from you all because I think we'll probably try to do one of these on Friday, if not Saturday morning. So let's get just to check in on the predictions for the rest of this tournament. Uh, Croissant, AL or BLG?
I'm gonna go AL still. Yeah.
Yeah, we here.
I'm gonna go AL as well, and I think this will be even like I think FlyQuest BLG was close, but I think AL will stomp BLG.
Okay,
Yeah. I have 3-0 AL.
I'll say 3-1 because I feel like there's enough chaos. Like we've gotten very few 3-0s in this event,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I feel like Fearless or something is creating enough chaos that like you get enough variance for at least one a 3-1. But all right, and then we have, assuming we all think AL is going through, AL or T1.
Ooh.
T1.
This is where it gets hard.
I think the thing about T1 is I trust, like, or the reason why I had Genji winning was because I think Genji's a smarter team. I think when it comes to AL or LPL historically, it always tends to be these more kind of skirmishing comps. And I feel like when T1's at their best, they're playing very aggressive. They're not really playing the map too slowly, I feel like. Um, at least that's how I perceived this series, where I feel like if T1 had a comp that they could fist fight a ton, they would take those fights. But if they weren't able to get those leads through fights, it felt like in game 5 we saw like the Draven Pike game. If they weren't able to build a big enough lead, they kind of struggled against the more slow-paced Genji. But I imagine against AL, there will be a lot more room to punish and capitalize on mistakes that they do make.
Yeah.
I'll take T1 3-1. I
Mm.
think that AL has a tendency to drop a lot of waves, and T1's been playing 3 lanes out really well this tournament.
Croissant.
Sorry, Mahir said
T1.
T1.
Yeah.
And Cubby said
T1.
Yeah.
T1 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of me feels like T1 was like Genji showed their game 5 Jinx comp, and that's something they should have saved for grand finals. Meanwhile, T1 was like, "Ooh, here's Draven Pike. Like, he's something you guys got to think about, but not really." So I was like, "Are they sandbagging?" But I did not like some of their. Uh, I think AL will have better drafts in the series. I agree, T1's just a better team. But yeah, I'm gonna have AL then, just to go against the grain.
All right. I'll say T1 because I'm always a T1 believer.
I want T1 to win, but I think AL will.
Okay, so we'll go based off of all your predictions. So Cubby and Mahir, T1 or Gen G? Can T1 do the salty run back and throw off Gen G?
Lower bracket buff, yeah. Honestly, yeah. I think Doran's playing really well this tournament. I know that you can point to game 5 and say that his Ambessa RN was a throw, which it was, but I felt like Doran was actually the better top laner in that series, which is never something I feel like when it comes to Keen versus Doran. So I think that's actually a really good sign for T1 moving forward. I do think that Doran's actually playing good enough where they can win. So I have T1 winning in lower bracket buff. Yeah.
Mahir?
I think for me, it legitimately is so close. I have a T1 jersey on right now, but I'd still go Genji, honestly. So I take Genji.
Percent. You said AL Genji in the finals. Who do you think between those two?
Still think Genji takes it. I was really impressed with how they won or played it, even with narrow win cons on some of their comps.
Yeah. I will say T1 because I do think that the lower bracket buff, I feel like them just like if they just play this extra match, they come in with so much heat, and I feel like oftentimes like
Right.
I've seen this so many times, and I know it's only a day, but you see it so many times in the LCS playoffs back in the day. Whenever like a team would get a bye for 1 week, and then they just look like worse because they wouldn't play for 2 weeks. I know it's only a day, but I'm a firm believer in like chaining together wins, um, a la old Cloud9 gauntlet trips to Worlds. So
Yeah.
I think if T1 makes it to the finals against Genji again, I feel like they'll just be even more battle hardened. So
Well, it's true that there'll be 2 days
well, it's only
break,
one
right?
extra day for because they both get tomorrow off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I meant. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break before we get into the actual prize picks lineups that we're gonna be making. So here's a quick video from me on how prize picks works if you're watching for the first time and don't know how it works. So we'll be right back.
This video is brought to you by PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching your favorite esports or sports. So I'm going to show you right now how this works on the app. It's super easy to use. So maybe I like Jojo Pyun at more than 9.5 deaths over the first 3 games of his series. And maybe I believe Mickey X is going to get less than 31 assists. I'll go ahead and hit finalize lineup, where it'll show me that if both these things end up coming true and I play an entry fee of, let's say, $20, I'm going to end up winning $60. PrizePicks is available in over 40 states, including California and Texas. And if you sign up, use that link below. It's a big thing that you can do to help me. You can use code TRAVIS whenever you make your first lineup of $5 or more. Win or lose, they're going to give you $50. Now, please only choose to play PrizePicks if you can do so responsibly, but doing so and signing up does help my channel very much. And you can actually join the discussion with other TGI viewers in my Discord. We have a PrizePicks channel. If you're trying to get into it, that's a great place to start. So thanks so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring this piece of content.
All right, so yeah, that is how PrizePicks works. You just choose more or less on squares, which is what we're going to be doing here as these wonderful folks give me their lineups. And I do want to say, Cubby, unfortunately, your lineup last week that you gave us or in the last episode did not go through. Croissant, I
Bummer.
don't think you gave us one in the last episode. But Mahir is on a 2-episode streak. And what's crazy is, Mahir, you gave us a flex pick or flex play,
Mm-hmm.
which meant that only 3 of the 4 squares needed to win, and all
Mm-hmm.
4 won. So you had
Yeah.
Guma more than 11.5 in today's match. He got 17. You had Kai Wing
Mm-hmm.
needing to go over 26 assists. Barely got it at 27. That was a close
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Chovy and Ruler more than 25, and literally in the final moments of Game 3 today, they got
Mm-hmm.
to 27. I think
Yeah.
in the base at the end, and then Beishuan, you had under 9 kills, he got 7. So
Mm-hmm.
that is a 4 square hit. So congratulations on being the reigning champion. We'll see if you can keep it up on the next
Mm-hmm.
lineup, but that's pretty cool. How do you what do you make of you doing this 2 in a row?
I mean, honestly, I've gotten lucky a couple times now. And in going more on my luck, I believe I have 4 as well for tonight. So I'm gonna keep on slamming these 4 square plays, and hopefully we can keep up the win streak. I wouldn't mind a hat trick at all. So yeah.
Well, I want to applaud you because I think, well, like Cubby, I think you
Impressive.
gave us a 3 square at one point in time, but I do feel like Mahir is playing riskier lineups with the multiple squares and still winning. So I think it's pretty impressive. All right, on the board today, because we don't know who's playing the following 2 days, we only have squares for tomorrow's match. So that's what we're choosing between AL and BLG squares. I'm going to get lineups from each of you going through. Cubby, why don't you go ahead and start? We'll see if you can win this one.
Okay. Keep in mind I have AL 3-0.
Okay.
So I have Kyle getting over 33.5 assists because I've seen these two teams play a lot in the LPL, and they do not care for macro very much. They like to fight. And we've seen that with AL throughout the tournament too. So I have them as a favorites and think Kyle hits that. And then I have BLG's duo of Knight and Elk getting under 24.5 kills over the 3 games. I do not. I think that AL, just given how all the teams have talked about AL behind the scenes and where BLG is at, like the two teams that LPL sent, one is the team with brains and one is the team with brawn. And BLG does not have like any brains to keep up with AL. So I think that AL just smack them. Because everyone at MSI has held AL in pretty like high regard as a tournament favorite. And everyone's like, what is up with BLG? Like the fact they made top 4 is pretty impressive, frankly. So I think the road just ends here.
All right. So you're going Kyle, more than 33.5 assists, Knight and Elk, less than 24.5, 24.5 kills.
Superman, DC, universe rebooted, just released. You think that Kyle's not going to get a ton of assists from that? No way.
Right. So you think this is like a
Yeah.
DC's paying Riot Games behind the scenes to match fix
That's interesting. Where did he get his name
for
from?
marketing resources?
And for purposes of me working with Riot in the past, I'm going to say no. I do not think that's the case, Travis. But you
All
know,
right.
name
Well-
buff, yeah.
Well, now what we do is we turn to our other analysts here and see if they would tail this lineup or if they disagree with any part of it. So, going over to Mahir, what do you think of this?
I I agree with Cubby's points about AL tending to prefer to play more scrappy as opposed to the more macro centric teams like Gen G. I think the one thing I am worried about is when teams tend to play scrappy, you run the risk of one team snowballing and the other team getting stomped. Which I mean, I know BLG has underperformed, but at the end of the day, they still have Bin, they still have Knight, and they still have Elk. And if he's on, they have on. So part of me is just really worried about how high that number is because we're essentially looking at 11 plus assists per game, which is 100% doable, right? Like Kyle, I think, has performed pretty well, one of the best
He's
supports
good.
in the world, but I'm a little bit wary on the exact number. So I thought about that one, but I kind of strayed away because of how high the number was.
Okay. Do you like the Knight and Elk square at 24.5 kills or less than?
Yeah, so I actually like that one quite a bit. I originally had it, and then I ended up not deciding to continue with it just because I felt like there were a couple ones that were better. But I do think that's a pretty solid one and has a pretty decent chance of, uh, happening.
Yeah. Croissant?
I liked that square as well. I did not know it was an option. But yeah, no, I think Elk especially has been. I think Knight's been playing pretty well. What I expected. I think Elk's playing worse than I expected, and so I don't see that changing too much because I think Hope and Kyle have a good read of that bot matchup. I think if something goes awry, it will be very topside. So even if AL manages to put up or even if BLG manages to put up a good fight, I don't know if um, they'll be able to hit that combined mid 80 carry duo stat line.
All right. What about the Kyle more than 33.5 assists?
That is a very big number. I don't really have a good.
Mhm.
Having not been on the show with you guys till today, I don't have a good sense for how high that really is. But the one thing I'll say about it is like, uh, I think neither of these teams will give I don't know what the sport draft will look like in the first 3 games, but I have noticed that when these two teams play against each other, they put a lot of resources into trying to make sure they get the right top matchup for Bin and Flandre. So uh, they when that happens, then the sports end up being on not as much like the Nikos and stuff. And that's weird because like the Nikos and the Karmas are like lane dominant and the game revolves around them, but also they end up getting less assists, I feel like, a lot of times than when you're just like on Alistar Rakan and then you're just like
Yeah.
every team fight you're guaranteed like 5 for pressing E twice. Um, but yeah, not totally sure.
Right.
Small aside, I think people have really slept on like how powerful the Moonstone Karma's been later on in games. Because that item's just really strong, and I feel like Karma's been slingshotting back into games and being really good. That's been an interesting one to me.
Yeah,
I
and the
just
scaling
don't
on
think it's
it's
been
crazy.
talked about.
But
Just as a barometer, by the way, in terms of the assist number, you're saying you don't know like how crazy 33 and a half assists is.
27's
Busio,
average.
Busio and their Busio in the FlyQuest versus AL match had a square that was, where is it? I just had it a second ago.
He was 26 and a half, and
Yeah,
I'd say average like 28.
he was 26 and a half and he got to, or no, he was 24 and a half. 24 and a half was the square, and he landed at 37 assists at that match. So like it can happen. I mean, it happened against AL with Busio, but
one
um,
karma game and you're there. But yeah.
so all right, let's go to our next contestant here, Mahir. Mahir, what are your squares for this evening?
So the first one I had was Flandre, more on the assists. My website actually just crashed, so if you could read me the number, but I
Yeah,
remember taking that one.
Flandre at
Uh,
assists is
the
more
Flandre,
than 19.
yeah, so that one is a little bit risky for most top laners. When you look at the way Flandre plays, I think Cubby mentioned it on the last time we held the show, was Flandre just tend to drop waves and just roam. And I feel like when AL is at its best, it's typically on a champion that enables Flandre to do that. So usually I wouldn't take that number for any other top laner, but I do think Flandre is one of those players where I expect him to have way more assists than average. So I like the Flandre more on the assists. Um, the second score I had was Knight more than kills. Again, my
More
website
than
crashed. I
12
don't
and a
remember the
half
number.
kills. More than 12 and a half kills.
Yeah, so I like that number a lot for a couple reasons. I do think that Knight obviously played better than Quad in their series, but I do think people didn't really, because obviously the discussion is going to be about how well FlyQuest played, but I do think Knight had a very solid performance yesterday. Obviously some low moments, but his Victor was really strong, and in general he played pretty well yesterday. I do have faith that the role that will be the least diffed versus AL should be mid lane. I think the one that would be the most is jungle, but I think Knight should be able to hold his own or straight up outright beat Shanks. So I like the Knight more than kills, assuming he will be their win con for a lot of the BLG games. Um, and then the next thing I had after that one was I like the Tarzan more than maps 1 through 3 kills. Now the thing about Tarzan is he
That
can
was
play
more than
literally
10
anything.
for context, yeah.
Yeah, more than 10.
Yeah.
The reason I like that one so much is because he plays literally everything in the game. But I think one thing FlyQuest really revealed versus BLG is the fact that Beishuan, when you invade him and when you put him behind, he tends to really look very shaky. And I totally envision them saving Tarzan's pick for later. I don't think he's going to be slapped on Sejuani, Skarner, Maokai that much. Like maybe he'll have one tank game, but I could totally see them allowing Tarzan to play these more aggressive picks because I do think that this will be the most diff role on the day. Like I think the gap between Tarzan and Beishuan is very huge. So for that reason, I do like the Tarzan more than 10 kills on the first 3 maps. Um, and the last one I have is Shanks more than 12 kills on maps 1, 2, 3. I do think Shanks at times has made a lot of mistakes, but considering how outclassed I think BLG should be in theory, I do think Shanks should be in a position to pick up at least 4 kills a game, which is what we would need. Technically, we need one of those games to have 5 kills for him to go over. But I do like the Shanks more than 12 kills on maps 1 through
You
3 as
just think
well.
this is going to be a very bloody match because you've got Flandre at more than 19 assists, Knight more than 12 and a half kills, Tarzan more than 10 kills, Shanks more
Mhm.
than 12 kills. So you just expect a lot of fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very, very, very bloody. I did mention I think AL will be stomping them very comfortably,
Yeah.
but I do think that Knight should be kind of like the knight in shining armor, pun intended. So
All right.
yeah,
Are you playing flex play or power play on this? Do you think all three or all four?
they say go big or go home. I still have a couple more days before I go home, so I'd go power.
Okay, okay. Wow. All right, that's wild. Okay, cool. So, Cubby, what do you make of this? This is a lot.
I like Flandre squares in particular, with Tarzan more than kills and Flandre more than assists. I actually almost if you're gonna make a lineup, you have to have picks from 2 different teams. I almost had the Tarzan pick in my lineup, but yeah,
Yeah. So you're, how about you're not as much as big on the others?
not as on board about Knight kills. I have BLG just getting smoked in this series. And it feels like a lot of the meta right now is I agree with what Croissant's talking about with a series about both teams putting a lot of resources into what top lane picks get, but oftentimes what that leads to is your top side just being first three as a whole. And I think a lot of the meta is like what mid laners are giving over which games right now. And for me, a lot of the supportive mid laners are being given over first because if you don't, then they will never leave the ban list. So like I expect a Talia 0 trade, and if that happens, like the Talia is going to rack up assists, but probably not kills, right? Um, so a little bit worried about that.
Croissant, what do you make?
Hmm. I think it's a toss-up on a lot of those. I think when we speak about this series in general, the last time these two teams played, again, like a month ago, but they played against each other twice leading into just like in LPL playoffs. And I think both times the kill count was actually pretty low in the first couple of games. It was like um, something like 15 to 8, 14 to 7, like and then got more chaotic in the last couple games. But uh there was also like a much more controlled set of top lane answers into Rumble. And I looked back at BLG's series. Um, yeah, anyway, there might I can get into that later, but there might be a shit ton of kills this series, unlike the other times it was played. I'm just trying to bank on the fact that I don't think it will be, but it just really depends on what AL um, yeah, what they decide to do with their whether they decide to leave Rumble up game one or if they try to just take it out.
So,
Which is the
I will say, unfortunately, here, this lineup is illegal. I just learned you can only have up to two players for the same team
Oh
on
no.
a docket. Right now you have three. So if you were to drop
Oh,
one, what would you drop?
honestly, I think we might need to drop the Flandre assist just because I think the other two are a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah.
Um, I guess my website didn't show that, or maybe I hadn't input any number yet for the money, so maybe it didn't show that. But
It
yeah, I
shows up
didn't know
when you
that.
go to
So
hit submit, unfortunately.
okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I, didn't,
Okay.
I haven't hit submit on any of these. So yeah, I would take out the Flandre one just because again, even for Flandre, it's a very high metric. I think it's very reasonable to expect 4 kills from your mid laner per game, in an advantageous position. And I just mentioned why I think Tarzan will hit his more lines. So I think we'll take out the Flandre one.
Okay. All right. Finally, we have croissant.
yo. I put a simple one. I just put Knight. It actually changed while I was looking at it. I
Oh,
think it was Knight more than 19, but now it's more than 18.5. So it looks like I'm on the uh
they're agreeing with you.
mm,
Or are you going the opposite direction?
I think I'm going. Yeah, it's better for me now. So uh, I think the expectation is just more people are expecting Knight to not get that many assists and BLG to get rolled. And then I have been somewhat contradictory at less than 9 kills.
Okay.
But it's
Well,
a
you need to have
3xer.
two. They need to be from different teams.
Hmm?
You
Oh
need to have at
no.
least one AL player in here
Fine,
too. So
fine.
go look at the
Then I
AL
will.
scores and pick something.
Wait, can I do Knight and bin, but then have one more
Yes,
in addition to this?
because
Okay.
that's what Mahir just did.
Yes.
Uh,
So I will have that plus. Um.
I know it's been a
Oh,
while since you've
Tarzan
looked
at
at
more than 10.
Tarzan more than 10. You don't sound very confident in that. You
Yeah.
say it and then
Who
you wince.
cares? Who cares? This isn't real money.
Wait, for people who are watching this, it is. So, so if
We're
you're,
not them, Travis.
yeah, I know. I'm just saying people are wanting to get an idea of what is like something that feels like good advice, and you feel
Yeah,
like the
no, I
Tarzan
mean,
more than
I
10
would
is.
say that that one is a placeholder. Anyone who actually would want to follow this, I would just listen to the logic that I have for why I think BLG is going to hit those two on those two players, and then just
Pick
pick
an
whatever you want
AL square.
on the other side,
Okay, well, I will
knowing
say
that.
the Tarzan square is popular. So, like, it's got
Yeah.
a little fire
Ooh.
emoji on it, which
Yeah.
means a lot of people are picking it. So, I don't know if they agree or disagree with you, but I assume they agree because a lot of people think AL is favored. So, why do you think Tarzan could get more than 10?
I think he could get more than 10 because he's been because of I think people are afraid of giving a free win like Maokai draft and stuff like that, and so you might see less willingness to have that go through. And huh? Sorry, Thinkar just whispered something. I thought he was talking to me. Um, less, yeah, less likely to get like the Maokai stuff, and more like, he. What we saw from Canyon Zed, I think that's influenced by um, Tarzan, because Tarzan was like the first, I think, jungler to bring out Zed jungle in major region. He played it, and so yeah, you might see him on Zed, you might see him on whatever. But even if you don't, uh, yeah, he's just been by far their most consistent performer. Beichuan's been their least consistent performer, um, and I think it's been trending up for Beichuan, but I still expect Tarzan to just frag out.
All right,
Yep.
he's gonna frag out. All right, Mihir or Cubby, any thoughts on on Croissant's nervous lineup?
All here for Tarzan fragging out.
I actually think it's really funny because I think Croissant mentioned how it's a flip, and honestly, I think literally half of the possible squares you could pick in this series are flips, because it's kind of the performance we've seen versus what we know they're capable of. So like Bin, Knight, Elk, even On have this like really high pedigree, and it could be very bloody, like Croissant mentioned, or it could be like the last few times they played where it's relatively reserved. So I honestly, this is the one time where I'm gonna say you might as well flip a coin, heads or tails, and pick whatever you want, and may God be with you.
Yeah.
AL30 Knight is they're gonna make BLG look like G2 with nameplates off.
I mean,
I
I will
mean,
say it's
Yeah.
interesting that Mahir picked more than 12 and a half kills for Knight, and you're picking more than 18 and a half assists, Croissant. So it's just like an interesting thing here where you guys are picking kills or assists. I
They're
mean,
betting on the Knight
obviously,
Talia.
yeah, yeah. It's really comes down to
Yeah.
like champion picks. I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah,
Yeah, I think the mid meta has become the most clear and crystallized. Um, and so I just expect Knight to, like, last time he played against Shanks, Shanks was just playing the Rise of Annie, running around the map. He's gonna be a little bit more like, I don't expect Knight to pick a Kali, and it's just, you
Galio
know.
duty or something.
Oh yeah, just
Yeah,
like to prioritize the correct champion, so it's kind of hard to fuck up the mid drafts. The reason I kept bringing it back to the top situation, which I think if people really want to dive deep on this, is like, I'm sorry I didn't do the work for you, but like if I had a little bit more time and I was like really serious about it, it would just be like every time BLG has played a series, enemy team has given them open rumble and just let them play it and BLG took it every time game 1, or in FlyQuest case they kept it banned, right? And then they got fucking game 5. But knowing that, like, AL is very much in the camp of, we don't want this to be a draft liability across 5 games, so Tabe's like, let's open this. But unlike LPL playoffs in spring, they don't have Gwen, which was a much stronger answer to it. They don't have the, like, at the time, just because of like the jungle 2v2 and stuff. And then Yorick is not as good of an answer. So I'm like, yeah, that is going to be, I think, a huge that'll be a huge momentum swing, because if BLG runs away with Ben playing game 1, but yeah, and then on conversely, if they don't, then Ben has been playing Sion game 1 of like every series, and he just doesn't look that good on it, but he has to play it because it's like everybody else can play it, and when he plays those games, sometimes he can do his job, but like then Ben will be like 0-0, whatever. But then Knight will have a lot of assists because Beishuan and Elk benefit. It's like they just fully play through like untouchable top lane, and then mid lane's getting a bunch of assists for his jungle AD carry. So
Cool. Well, hey, thanks everybody for the show. This was a bit of a longer episode because we had more stuff to talk about and a tangent about the FlyQuest stuff. But looking forward to seeing how you all do with your picks. We'll try to do one. I need to figure out when they're going to be putting up the squares. It might be Friday evening after the match, or it might be Saturday before the match, but we'll try to do another one of these episodes before. So thanks everybody for watching. Good luck to all of our contestants, and we'll see you all next time.